I'd like to bring topics, and I've been doing a long series on the failures of Christianity, and this one kind of counts as that, I think. It's yet another failure. I've done about 30 of them. Today, as far as I count, it's 31, and today I'm going to talk about emotional manipulation. And I've claimed that the 3 pillars of Christian apologetics are lies and deception, 1, logical fallacies, 2, and emotional manipulation, 3. I have never talked about emotional manipulation as a topic on its own, and I think it's worth doing that. And if you're paying attention, those 3 pillars are pretty nasty things. They shouldn't convince anybody of anything. Yet I claim that these are what every apologetic that I've ever heard is some combination of those 3 things. So when Christians use these tactics, they unwittingly tell the world that their religion needs those tactics to advance itself. And it's a kind of admission that there's nothing of intrinsic value in the religion, otherwise you'd present that instead of the logical fallacies and emotional manipulation. So I think that emotional manipulation is a purview of con artists, yet Christianity uses these sorts of things all the time, and so one could reasonably conclude that Christianity is therefore a con. So today, let's see. So cons use emotional manipulation like this. A normal con goes, there's some sort of appeal to greed where you're going to make a lot of money, some big reward is going to come your way, and the dupe is usually convinced that they're special, they're in on some sort of special deal, or they're special in some way, and they're getting this deal where other people aren't, and aren't you wonderful? They may be encouraged not to talk about their dealings or to ask questions about it because it's all secret and hush-hush. And they will be asked to contribute or sacrifice for the eventual payout. And of course, from the con's perspective, that's the contribution or sacrifice is what the con is looking for. That's the con's payout. So Christianity uses slightly different emotions. They're not necessarily an appeal to greed, but there is an appeal to reward. There is Schadenfreude, which I'll explain in a minute, hate, fear and loathing, piety, and glurge. And I want to hit each of those very briefly. Reward. So Christians, they get not only a reward of an eternal afterlife, which is a big reward, but also they get an infinite reward of not being tortured forever in an afterlife.
That's a big reward.
It's a double one, right? But wait, there's more. You can spend eternity with your buddy Jesus. And so it's
definitely act now. And
act now, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
Don't want to wait.
Don't want to wait. So it does have that sort of feel. So this incredible reward here, and the con is kind of subtle. Ministers are selling something intangible. You're going to get something after you die, and unverifiable. So it's also without evidence, and it's hard to know when you've been duped. You just have to have faith, and that's part of the con, right? And the pay-in is a lifetime of tithes and following God, as interpreted by the minister, and being generally subservient to some God that doesn't necessarily even exist. So there is kind of a reward here. There is kind of a greed angle almost, but it's a different type of greed. There's also Schadenfreude, which is a German word for taking pleasure in somebody else's misfortune, and this is kind of one of our base human emotions, I think. And this seems to be the core appeal of end times theology, which is really a multi-million-dollar industry. The idea is that you get to watch the torments of the non-believers and other people you've been taught to hate, because you're going to be swept up to heaven and enjoy this, enjoy the show, and other people are going to be, tortured and such. And in Matthew 13:41 through 43, I'm going to read, "The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and to them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire, and there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. And then shall the righteous shine forth in the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let them hear." So if that isn't Schadenfreude, I don't know what is. So, and this also seems to be part of the appeal of the culture wars. If you get to make laws that screw over gays, or make women bear children that they can't afford, or if you can screw over atheists as part of the deal, then that's all good too. Hate. Christian churches they make lots of money from hate. Let's just be clear about it. They tell you who to hate, and they in their fundraising letters and these sorts of things, they say, oh, these people are on the march. We gotta Having an enemy makes you powerful and makes you rich. And so this idea of love the sinner, hate the sinners is BS. It's all hate. And I think that most of the terror that Christian leaders feel about same-sex marriage is simply that they're going to lose money on the gimmick, on their money-making gimmick. They're going to lose out. When gays are normal and they're getting married and mowing their lawns or whatever, it's like, how can you make money off of that, right?
Well, I think the way they'll make money is that 50 years from now, the churches will be performing the gay weddings, and they'll be saying that they were orchestrating the movement toward gay rights.
Right, and claim credit.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so meanwhile, some of the other ministers might have to get
They
some
stood
honest
against
work.
those anti-gay secular values that were oppressing homosexuals.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to be what the history
ticket.
is going to say, 50 years from now. Just
okay.
check back and I won't be alive, but you can see if I'm right or not.
Oh, yeah, we were really the vanguard of the slavery.
And certainly there were people who were religious that were anti-slavery, but to say that they weren't also orchestrating, maintaining slavery in a really powerful way is to sort of eviscerate history.
Okay. I've got a couple more. Fear and loathing. Christians believe they are miserable wretches completely unworthy of redemption, but their God deigns to love them only conditionally. At any moment, their God could turn on them, so they'd better keep in line.
Yeah.
Kind of a, and this is an inherently unhealthy codependent sort of relationship. This is very creepy stuff.
And you have to have faith. You have to have faith that you're in the right religion, that you're doing it, that you crossed all your T's and dotted your I's, and that you didn't, have some misstep that you forgot to ask forgiveness for because, it's all it takes.
Never completely sure.
One little blemish and you can't stand before your God because He can do anything except for tolerate imperfections in things that He created imperfect.
Right, exactly. And Christians try to spread this fear to others through threats of damnation. And I get that all the time. Is whenever I argue theists into the corner, they usually come out with threats.
Oh, now wait a minute. You don't get this till they're in the corner because I get it off the bat.
Do you?
What if you're wrong?
What if I'm wrong?
You're an atheist. Right. What if you're wrong?
What if I'm wrong?
I get the threat like Pascal comes out of the box like almost
immediately.
Yeah, he's the front horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But I get the more overt threats later on. That's a pretty subtle. That's a pretty subtle. Yeah. I guess. Right. So I consider this a classic case of breaking your leg to sell you a crutch, right? Okay. Where they want you to be kind of sucked into this terrible relationship so that they can sell you their religion.
Yeah. I think as only atheists, you only get like half the threats. There's like half the vitriol. You don't get as much. It's like as you pile things on.
Oh, you think I'm special?
Yeah. You need to like flaunt eating shrimp or something like that, and yeah.
Yeah. Sadly, a lot of the Christians don't even know about the shrimp.
I'm surprised with all these atheists in here, the studio doesn't just like flood or something. I don't know how we do this every week without some sort of where's the brimstone and the?
Right.
I guess it's coming, right? We're gonna get it, and then they can laugh.
That's
They can exercise the Schadenfreude and be excited that we're all suffering, and you told us so, and we should have lived our lives cowering in fear, and we didn't, and that's what we get for acting like human beings and not being ashamed of our humanity.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, I got two more. Piety. So piety could be described as a false sense of nobility for unthinkingly seeking the hedonistic rewards of eternal bliss.
So it has nothing to do with pie.
No, nothing to do with pie.
That's a shame.
And so I don't think that seeking eternal rewards is noble, although they're billing it as noble. And martyrs, I think, are just following through with their hedonistic beliefs, and maybe they're paying the price because of it. And I think that saints are shills or dupes, and not to be exalted. The people that are toeing the line. So, and sacrifices such as Lent and saying the Rosary are just, I think, self-manipulation emotionally. They're just to help you feel better about yourself. And perhaps the purpose of these things in the con is to distract people from actually thinking and actually, getting out of the mindset. Glurge is another one. This is an internet term. That's
I was going to say, this is a new word for me. I wrote it down, glurge.
And so when you get these kitten photos and rainbows and all this sickly sweet stuff that gets forwarded, that's glurge, right? It feels good,
Who hasn't seen it?
And it has lots of calories, but no substance, right? It's just.
Have you seen that kitty though?
Oh no, come on.
It's got his little paws. Oh my God.
Okay. I'll admit it. I watched goats jumping on trampolines this week, and it was too fun.
Did you see the sheep with the face mask on?
No. Okay. All right. Stop.
Okay. Getting sidetracked.
So, in Christianity, think of humble figures of praying children, and that's glurge for sure.
Oh my gosh,
or claims about God's grace and how wonderful God is, or the personality cult surrounding Jesus, or anything having to do with spirituality.
Do people use the term glurgelicious? Like glurgelicious?
We can coin it right here. Heard it here.
If somebody hasn't already done it, I think the word lends itself to that. Like, oh my gosh, that meme is so glurgelicious. So, just saying.
Okay. All right, I want to wrap up here. Emotional manipulation is the stuff of cons, and keep your emotions in check and use your brain instead. And the use of emotional manipulation in apologetics is just par for the course, and the fact that emotional manipulation is commonly used means that Christianity needs it in order to advance itself.
Yeah.
And that's another failure of Christianity.
Yeah, always beware somebody that tells you, trust not, don't lean on your own understanding, don't reason. I mean, that is some scary stuff when a person is telling you that what I want to sell you is best if you don't think about it too much.
It's like red alert,
keep that in mind, because this is what that translates to. I just took a little bit of notes while I was listening, because I have not seen your presentation. So I just wanted to say that, I've talked about them utilizing pressure like used car deals because if you simply said, well, there is this God that created everything, and the God wants you to believe in it, then a person could just be like, well, I can't really tell if there's a God or not, and so I guess I'll just wait, and if I die and then there's a God, I'll find out. So you have to have something in there that says, no, you have to act now. And that's when you say, oh, no, see, after you're dead, it will be too late, because there's the punishment that gets piled on. And so you need to make this decision right now. And that's what they do at like the car lots, when they'll say, oh, you have this deal on the car, and you're like, yeah, I need to go and see what my bank says about how much they'll loan me for the, and they're like, no, you don't need, there's somebody else looking at it. They were here this afternoon, and you say, you need to make this decision right away. Don't wait. And this is what they do. They have it's like this little pressure gimmick that they put on, because they say like, oh, this is such a big question. But really, if they weren't threatening you with hell, it wouldn't be an interesting or big question at all. Who would care? Because you wouldn't have to make a decision about it. You could just say, well, it's just one of those things we can't know.
I hear this sort of tactic with the end times too. It's like, the world might end and you're going to be on the wrong side of the
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. It's like the pressure. It's like if that wasn't there, nobody would have any reason to care about this whatsoever. Really. I mean, you would just say, it's indeterminate, and so set it aside. If evidence ever comes up that's compelling, I'll listen to this. But in order to keep you from having that nonchalant attitude about a question that wouldn't impact you at all in your life on any level, they have to tell you that you're being saved by it.
Yep.
So it's interesting. And then with the Schadenfreude, I actually noticed too, this is something that I talk about and recently even came up with on a secular level for something else, but I'm not going to get into that. But I do think that there's something about people who live in a conservative, fearful mindset, that they sort of resent the fact that you run around free and happy and you're not scared, right? This happens in other areas that aren't theological, where I will see people who are just like, well, it's almost, you see it a lot with victim blaming, where it's almost like I told you to be more careful and you weren't careful, and that's why this happened to you, and completely ignore all the people that are, taking strolls in the evening that don't end up getting mugged or killed. It's like all those people. And so they look at these selective data points where something went wrong, where somebody was behaving in a very free way and something went wrong, and they justify the fearful mindset of all these precautions that they take by simply saying that if I don't take them, this will happen to me. And it's like, there's always going to be something that can happen to you, and ultimately you could just lock yourself in a tower and be Rapunzel all your life. And this could be your life if that's what you want.
Then you're going to get headlights.
Well, it sounds kind of cliche, but in Finding Nemo, Nothing will ever happen to you. You can lock yourself in a box and nothing will ever happen to you. And you're right, nothing will ever happen. That will be your life.
Nothing good, nothing bad.
Yeah,
right?
And so at some point you have to step out and say, I'm not going to have fear curtail my life. Fear is not going to dictate to me how I behave and what I do.
Absolutely.
Now that's a different thing than, exercising general prudence or being aware of things. But the idea that you actually are afraid. I mean, there are people who I think walk around almost like in a state of fear all the time.
Oh, it permeates our culture.
And the others where I see this,
things like the drug war and
yes,
wars on terror and all this stuff. It's all be afraid, be afraid, be afraid.
The other thing, though, is with sexuality we see this. When you see somebody that's acting like a human being, that is like socially sexual, right? People freak out.
Yeah.
And you especially get people who are, the Schadenfreude comes out with the anti-choice. Because they love to throw down like unplanned pregnancy as a punishment.
Oh yeah.
And
absolutely.
STDs are a punishment and all of this. And it's just this idea that it's like, well, you can be responsible. And they'll throw out the 98% success rate of a birth control pill to look at the 2% fail and say it's not 100%, like right. abstinence, it's like terrible, our model, right. Our sexual model is the only way to be 100%. And it's like, you know what? I don't walk around in my life worrying that I am 100% safe from every single thing. And if I did walk around like that, I would be, like I said, locked behind 5 feet of brick and just with bomb shelter 1,000 feet underground. I mean, I don't really need a risk event to be only 2% available to me to feel safe. If you can't feel safe with 98% effectiveness, then then you're a scared person.
Yeah, and we have very bad estimates of how likely something is to harm us, right? We spend trillions of dollars on the war on terror, but heart disease is killing far more people. Right?
But I think it really makes them feel good to see somebody that's in the fail category, that's in, that has something to do with something that failed, like you were using condoms, but they got an STD, or they were using birth control, but they got pregnant, and they love to look at this. And I think it justifies their fear by looking at these very minuscule selected data points that are these weird bias confirmations that they have. And I think it's interesting that they're so used to and comfortable with living in that fear state, and they cannot stand when they see people that are actually behaving in a way where they're not afraid, where they are out having a healthy sex life, they completely flip out. This person is going to suffer. They need to suffer. They're taking birth control. They're avoiding the consequences. And it's like, no, they're being responsible. That is completely different. And it's just kind of, I'm so sad, I think, at how many people live their lives with this element of fear. I remember somebody one time telling me that fear is like an emergency light in your car, that it comes on, and once you recognize it, there's no need to keep it on. You know there's something wrong, you go, you check the car. It doesn't make you check the car any better to check it while you're afraid. So you don't have to stay afraid. You can recognize that there's the problem, that fear is alerting you to a potential problem, and then you can turn it off and go and figure out what's going on. But there is no situation where you're going to handle it better afraid than level-headed. Yeah. In fact, you handle things worse when you're afraid because it impedes your ability to think clearly. So banish fear from your life. Do not live your life afraid. It's like a cage that you put yourself into, and it pains me to see this.
Yes, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry. That's my rant.
What do you say we take